Call the February 8th, 2016 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Could we have the roll, please?
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Spring?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Kange?
Present.
Ms. Bailey?
Here.
Ms. Barker?
Here.
Mr. Sporhes and Mr. Spinelli have been excused. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the minutes for Monday, January 4th. Can I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Thank you. Any objection or discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are adopted. Disclosures. Mr. Spring.
I have none.
Ms. Bailey.
None.
Brandon.
No disclosures.
Mr. Kange.
None for me, thank you.
Ms. Barker.
Thank you. I will not be able to vote on item D1A because I was not seated as a member of the commission at the time of that action.
Thank you. That will be noted. And I actually also was not present when that case was heard. However, I did go back and listen to the tapes, so I will be voting on the resolution. So moving on to the consent agenda, Resolution 2016-007 is the only item. Can I have a motion to adopt, to approve? Thank you, Mr. Kange, seconded by Ms. Bailey. Any discussion? Please vote on the consent agenda. And that resolution is approved. We have two items on our agenda tonight. First up is, I've been asked by the fire marshal to let you know that currently the normal exit doors out back are not your exit. So in the event of emergency, please use these doors or out through the way that you most likely came in. So first up is case 2016-22. This is review and recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Anchorage School District 6-year capital improvement plan. Do we have a staff report or go straight to the... Thank you, Christine. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Anchorage Code of Ordinances says that the Planning and Zoning Commission shall review and make recommendations to the Assembly and the School Board on the annual capital improvement program for the Anchorage School District. The draft Anchorage School District Capital Improvement Program was submitted on December 29th, 2015 for Planning and Zoning Commission review and recommendations, and a work session was held on January 11th for your all's information and education on the CIP. Mr. Mike Nero is here tonight, the Capital Planning Director, as well as Mary Carey, the Project Manager, and Rachel Loden, in case you have any questions of them. The ASD staff reviews projects and funding within the ASD CIP and commission members, and this is your opportunity to ask them any questions, to provide final comments, formulate your findings, and make a recommendation on the draft CIP. And this will be, your recommendation will go prior to the Anchorage School Board action. So just real quickly, there's a bond proposal in the CIP. It's got 37 construction projects at 37 different facilities, district-wide seismic study that needs to be completed, and then 2 design projects. That's in the first year of the CIP. The years 2 through 6 have improvements at several schools, in addition to several district-wide life safety and building protection projects. They're also looking to replace school buses, and they also have a legislative request, and that totals over $15 million. That again is for several projects for elementary schools, 4 high schools, and 4 high schools. There's information that was found in tables 6 through 6F, and that talks about school enrollment, and then the facility use and how the current facilities are being used, including schools, and then the support facilities are also in the CIP. There was a capital improvement advisory committee that developed the draft CIP, and they do that in response to critical and growing needs within our Anchorage area. Again, this is your opportunity to provide final comments, formulate your findings tonight, and make a recommendation on the draft CIP. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question from Mr. Gange.
Thank you. More of a comment, but thank you, staff, for that presentation. Mr. Spring and I sat in on the work session, and in my opinion, they did a very thorough job. Answered a lot of our questions. My only recommendation would be that O'Malley goes back to being the Yellow Jackets, if you can fit that in there somewhere. But anyway, I think the school district did a great job in presenting the budget in the work session, and I would definitely support a motion to approve this.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Mr. Spring.
Are we going to get a presentation from the ASD staff?
I think they're here for questions or
I have some questions for them.
Hi, my name is Mike Nero, the Director of Capital Planning and Construction. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. A couple questions, nothing really major. On Table 5, you identify legislative appropriations for large-scale capital projects. That's page 18, I believe. And I'm a little confused. I see one place where that they say that the money has been appropriated, and then I see on the page 18 and under Table 5 that there's going to be a request for submitted to the legislature for money. What is the case? Is there money available currently for those projects, or is it all going to be submitted as part of a legislative request?
These were all proposed submittals to the legislation to request funding. However, the administration has been going through over the past week or so, kind of curtailing the overall list. We put on here what we anticipated to have the attention of the Planning and Zoning Commission out of all the requests, but it's a curtailed list. They curtailed the list down to pretty much safety and IT-related equipment refresh and things of that nature. So some of these projects that are on here, this was a draft, the high school upgrades, the tennis courts, those are not going to be submitted. So you'll see things like safety, traffic safety improvements, security enhancements, and things of that nature. So we would be happy to send that to you tomorrow, the updated list of what the administration plans to submit, and some of those would be traffic related.
I guess that makes sense. Some of these seem like they would be kind of a big reach to get money for them. So anyway, that means that the tennis courts, South High, field improvements are not going to be included in the request.
That's correct.
And what about Yosemite Drive?
Yosemite Drive is going to be included in that request. Actually, the administration decided to fund that, and the board just approved use of their funds to fund that. So we are not going to submit the Yosemite request for. They've already secured funding for that.
Oh, through the regular budget?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that seems, we heard that road project presented to the commission a few months ago, I believe, and it seems like we have to do that.
Yes.
We're under a court order to do that, aren't
yes.
we?
Yes, and they're about 95% complete with design and plan to bid it.
I'm glad you decided to do it that way, because I think we probably wouldn't comply with it if we were depending on state funding, because we probably wouldn't get it. So. And follow-up question then, darn, the East High football stadium, what are we going to do with that? That's needed, I think. The only school that doesn't have a football stadium, come on. No, I mean, do you have a plan for that project, or is that going to be dropped, do you think?
I tell you, as long as we're under this current fiscal environment. We're really taking more of a sustainment approach. You can tell by our capital improvement plan that really the projects that are on there are emergent component renewal projects, the bare minimal investment in some of these schools, which is, and then a large allocation for district-wide deferred major maintenance, roof replacements and generator replacements, life safety, and things of that nature. So to answer your question, not on the near horizon.
Then one more question on this particular table. We also were involved in the South High field improvements, and I'm curious what is the remainder to be done on that project that requires $3.5 million?
I believe the scope of that project, and you guys can validate, but we got everything done besides the visitor side. So including, there's some earthwork over there that needs to be done, a concrete pad, and then install bleachers. So they will be going forth with just the home field bleachers, and so that's the scope of that project. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, that's what we thought might happen, and we were told that there might not be enough money to finish it. What happens if the conditional use site plan isn't implemented according to the approval? That's an interesting question for staff, maybe. They may not be prepared to answer that question, but I mean, we did approve a site plan which included this visitors' bleachers. So if they don't ever build it, does that violate the site plan, or is that? I mean, I don't think the neighbors would care that much if they didn't build the visitors.
Probably preferable. But is your question to staff, John?
Yeah, maybe something to follow up on. Maybe not, we don't need it today, but maybe to follow up on that and get back to us on it about what happens to the validity of the site plan.
I think our recommendation would be, given the nature of the approval of that project, it's in your best interest to make sure you're in compliance with the site plan, even if you need to amend it in some way.
That'll be the way to do it. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then one other question. I noticed there was a lot of projects that require or are asking for IP scanners or cameras. IP, and I don't know what that is, so it seemed like every school had one in there.
Internet protocol, so they're high definition. They're replacing the old analog systems. A lot of systems in the schools that we have, security cameras, they're not very. We've referenced several videos, and they're not suitable for identifying, property culprits of property damage and things of that nature. So to enhance the security videos, most all schools are getting upgraded with the current standard across the district. So these are all old and antiquated systems that are being upgraded.
Okay, it just seemed like something I needed to know before I recommend approval. Such an extensive list of IP cameras there. I guess that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions or comments. Is that the case? Last chance. Can I get a motion to recommend the school district 6-year CIP? Tony.
Thank you. In regard to case 2016-0022, I move to recommend the approval of the Anchorage School District 6-year capital improvement plan.
Thank you. That motion is seconded by Mr. Spring. Anyone wishing to speak to the motion?
I'd just like to add that this approval complies with municipal codes and standards. It's part of our function to review and make a recommendation to the Assembly. I'll be supporting the motion.
John?
Just to add a few more findings, just supplement what Tony said. I think the proposed CIP appears to meet the facility needs of the Anchorage School District. It makes sense to reduce the first-year CIP budget at a lower level than the amount of the bonds to be retired, given the financial constraints that we're facing currently in the state. And I also think, would like to add that the staff, ASD staff, did a very good job of identifying the priorities that are needed, and it reflected in this CIP.
Thank you. Please vote on that recommendation. That recommendation is approved. Thank you for your time, both at this meeting and at the previous meeting. We appreciate it. And good luck moving forward. Next up is case 2016-10, Continental Auto Group Site Plan Review for a Large Retail Establishment. This is a public hearing. Let me read the procedure for public hearing. After the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedures. Petitioners, including his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Representatives of groups, 5 minutes. Individuals, 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the Commission. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the Commission. An individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Planning and Zoning Commission takes, except recommendations to the Assembly which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the Clerk's Office within 20 days after approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission of the resolution, which is the Commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing. Start with the staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a minor amendment to a large retail establishment. The car sales lot, Continental Auto Group, was developed in 1981. The large retail establishment standards or large retail establishment ordinance came into effect in 2001. This site was constructed well before the new rules on large retail establishments. This application is submitted under the old code. To keep that in mind. The proposed project will enclose a 5,740 square foot service area addition that is currently is a covered area for customer greeting and service writing. Some light maintenance such as wheel alignment, oil changes, fluid top off will be performed at the far west end of the addition. Additionally, the proposal includes a reconfiguration of the parking lot, increasing the amount of landscaping on the site, and a potential update of the on-site drainage. The department is recommending approval of the site plan subject to conditions 1 through 6 on page 10 of your packet. The site plan is found on page 59 of your packet, and a prospective rendering is on pages 65 and 66 of your packet. That's all I have for my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions. I'm presenting on behalf of one of my colleagues who had an unplanned absence and couldn't be here tonight. I know the applicant is here to also speak to their request.
Thanks, friends. That's your way of saying don't ask me any hard questions, is that what you're saying? All right, I have a question for you from Mr. Kange.
Thank you. Through the chair. A couple quick questions. One in regard to the arterial landscaping plan. You're recommending a restoration landscape plan should be submitted to address the issue, and in the same paragraph, the restoration plan should not be submitted until late spring, early summer in order to assess the condition of the plant material. Would this hinder, do you know, if this would hinder the petitioner's construction time frame if they can't submit this until last spring, early summer, or late spring, early summer? And maybe that's a question for the petitioner or petitioner's representative.
Yes, thank you for the question, Mr. Kange. I don't know how that would affect the applicant's timeline for the project.
Save that for the petitioner.
Yes, please. I can see where the condition of approval came from to evaluate the condition of the landscaping, you'd have to wait for the snow to melt, and then the landscaping that could be salvaged or remain would be fine, and those dead or dying shrubs would need to be replaced, and that's you'd have to wait till summer to evaluate that.
Sure. Could they, or could we just make some broad assumptions or could the petitioner representative just provide a plan and make some broad assumptions? Again, I don't want to affect their construction timeline, but maybe that might be an option to submit now, and then the petitioner's representative can use their best judgment to follow the plan that they've submitted, knowing that some plants may have died and some are living. Just a thought.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Cange, I think that the conditions of approval are acceptable to the applicant, and that this condition will not mess with their timeline because they still have to apply for a building permit. However, if this would stall their development, then I fully agree that we should find a way to resolve it so that
Francis,
they could move forward. Yeah.
Thank you. And one more question through the chair. I'm a bit confused on condition 6 in your recommendation, submitting plans showing an exterior community space. Just given the location and the traffic on that road, and I'm kind of, and maybe, again, I know you didn't put this together, but just because there's an opportunity during a site plan review, do we necessarily have to put that onto the petitioner at this point? So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, because I'm just not sold on this section K where we talk about providing this exterior space because there's a widened sidewalk. I'm not seeing what we're thinking there.
So, through the chair, Mr. Cange, this is a de facto big box site. It's considered an approved site plan the way it is because it the site was developed 20 years before the big box ordinance. New large retail establishments are required to have community spaces, and some of the car sales sites have done it near the front door by providing some seating, and then they'll often sort of display cars on either side, but create some sort of like seating area, a focal point near a front door, and that's past muster as a community space. Mm-hmm. I would guess that Ms. Ferguson intended for that entryway area on the side of Continental Subaru to have some sort of seating. The Commission, in its discretion, could strike that condition of approval. That's certainly something the Commission could do without violating any sort of code requirements. I think that she was trying to, I think that staff was trying to probably push the applicant to provide, bring the site closer to conformance with current code.
Sure, I understand. And if we hadn't said this standard is partially met, I probably wouldn't, give as much feedback. But just driving by this location, I can see that looks like plenty of community space and somewhat of a showroom, as you mentioned. So that's all I have. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Spring.
Yes, through the chair. Maybe a little explanation about what we're doing here would be useful. Some of the members haven't been involved with this before, but the large box retail site plan is supposed to move towards conformity with the standards, right? And but you don't have to move all the way to conformity. That's not the requirement. What is the requirement exactly? How far we could require the petitioner to spend up to 10%? Is that what it is of the cost of the addition or the improvement?
That's correct, Mr. Spring. The Commission, in its discretion, may require up to 10% the cost of the project upgrades to go towards other improvements that bring the site closer to conformance with the big box standards. So that is to say that the building addition needs to comply with the big box standards for the new new portion of the building. But the rest of the site, it would be too much to ask them to make it comply with all of the standards. So 10% of the cost of the project is spent usually on sort of like safety upgrades and that sort of thing, and they'll far exceed that. That 10% just with the landscaping and site drainage improvements that they'll make to the site. Many years ago, the Commission attempted to require an applicant to exceed the 10%, and there was a legal opinion that was shared with the Commission to sort of rein that back in a little bit to stick to what the code says.
Through the chair. So it looks like from the conditions of approval that you listed on page 10 that there may be three items that would fit that category where you're moving towards conformity with the standards. And that would be the landscape plan for the interior lot. Is that part of it? It looks like at least the visual landscaping would be part of it, right? I'm not sure if the interior is part of it or not. The concrete pad and ramped sidewalks for the overhead door, is that moving towards conformity, or would that be part of that, something you have to do as part of the new development?
Well, you know, with big boxes, it's always like this. You know, there's quite a bit of negotiation goes into it, and I wasn't involved with that. But typically with like a minor amendment type addition, because I've reviewed some other car sales sites. It's usually in the cases that I've dealt with, the 10% of the cost of the project was achieved through the new parking lot islands within the parking lot and exterior parking lot landscaping as well. So here they'll be, I guess they're already required to make the arterial landscaping meet code, so that wouldn't count. But the visual enhancement landscaping in the southeast corner of the site and the parking lot interior landscaping and the drainage improvements.
And the last one is the exterior community space. Now that would be moving towards conformity, and that would be part of the 10%.
Yeah.
Just a comment, I think, for the staff, and I don't know we can do anything here. It seems like in the past we've had information in our packet when this type of site plan comes up regarding how much they're being asked to spend to move towards conformity with the site plan. And here we don't have any information. I don't know whether we're exceeding our authority here or not, or under it, or how much room do we have to negotiate if we wanted to add something. And I find that staff report's a little bit lacking in that regard. And I realize you can't address my concern at this moment, so I'll let it go.
No, but it's a good concern, and I concur that we typically see that. Ms. Parker, you're in the queue.
I think Mr. Spring may have just commented the same question. I recall several months ago that we reviewed a very similar proposal for another car dealership in another part of the city, and I was wondering how consistent these conditions were with that other site review, and also comment that it also did have the financial data in it that we don't have here.
Right, it does serve to constrain the review, and when it's not there, they're just looking at all the standards. Did you have anything else, Ms. Parker? Thank you. I had a couple of questions. One on the pedestrian access, number J in the staff report, and it's carried over to a recommendation, so I just want to understand it. It talks about internal walkways, and says the glazed overhead door on the south elevation shows vehicles driving over the sidewalk. Petitioner's representative has indicated that there will be a concrete pad at the exit as well as a ramped sidewalk. So is the, and we'll ask them as well, but is the implication here, because it tracks with, I think, recommendation 5, submit a site plan showing the concrete pad and ramp sidewalks for the overhead door on the south elevation. So assuming they do that, then the standard, in your opinion, is that pedestrian access is met?
That's correct.
And I'm not sure that I quite understand it, but we'll let them address it. And then just another question for me on community space. Nothing in the code says you have to have outdoor space as well as indoor space. Is that right? You can use a combination of both, I believe.
In the new code...
but none of this is old code. So.
Yeah. The old code, I don't think...
Even the new code actually doesn't say you have to have indoor and outdoor. It says you can have indoor or outdoor or a combination of both, and it goes on to describe a whole bunch. But I only have that new code provision in front of me right now. But I mean, is the staff request or recommendation because you're asserting that there has to be outdoor space, or is it because you feel that they haven't met overall the requirement? Because you do note that they have, I mean, it's a car dealership, right? There's a lot of room to go inside and sit down. I mean, it's frankly, in my opinion, better served for customers than most types of uses, right? If we could all be so lucky to sit there while my wife goes and shops, I'd be, you know, but what's the assertion? I mean, there's got to be a reason for asking for it other than, again, the way it's worded is, looks like you could put it there.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Robinson. Yes, what you said about the new code is true, that you can do a combination of both, either or, in the new code. Old code, I apologize, I can't recall if it, I don't think it says anything about indoor. I think it's been typically applied to an outdoor community space. I share your sentiments about community spaces. I don't have anything more to add. Okay, well, just, you know, in the future, we'd really like to know why it is that staff is requesting something, right? Is it because we, again, haven't met that 10% threshold and that's where we've decided, or is it just someone's whimsy, right? Mr. Chair, there's no budget in here, and there isn't a lot of explanation on the community space. I think that sometimes the planner will seek to try and promote good development, and when a big box standard isn't met, that they'll try and negotiate with the applicant, doing something maybe that's not so expensive or something to bring the site closer to the standards. But I just don't know. No, it's fine. That's exactly the point, though. Someone's opinion of what good development is not necessarily of what the criteria is that they're being asked to review a project by. But that's fine. I mean, I think we've explored the issue enough. I think, is there anyone else? Mitzi, are you back in the queue, or is that from before? It's from before. Okay. I don't see any other questions for staff. Thank you, Francis, for the presentation. I'd like to invite the petitioner forward to start the public hearing. Please state your name for the record and let us know how much time you'd like us to reserve for rebuttal.
Okay. Melissa Branch with Big City Engineers, and I have the architect and representatives from Continental with me. I guess 3 minutes. I don't know that it'll take that long, but so there's a few things I wanted to address. On page 30 is the beginning of our narrative, and we actually do have what we estimated for the cost. The project hasn't been to bid yet, so it's an estimated cost that this addition and the changes that they're proposing are $1 million, and so the 10% cost would be $100,000, the compliance cost that we would have to spend towards. So I wanted to point that out, that we did provide that information. I think it just got overlooked. In regards to the exterior community space, we kind of grumbled about that. The requirement says interior and exterior. I think that's what, when I was working with Sharon Ferguson, she was looking at that we don't really have something exterior. There was a lot of discussion about that because we can provide benches or something, but then how much of the year is it actually used for? And Continental has actually focused on having an interior year-round usable space for that. So if you guys are willing to strike it, I'd be happy with that, but I mean, we could deal with that comment. Condition number 5, where it says submit a site plan showing the concrete pad and the ramp sidewalks. So we're proposing to have a sidewalk as kind of a curb around the south side of the addition because it's adjacent to the drive aisle, the circulation aisle, to have that. And there are doors, and so we are going to have to, in the grading, as we're preparing for building permit, account for that, so that as somebody, mostly service riders probably, but be able to walk across that and that we don't hinder either flow of traffic, so the pedestrian and whatever would come out of that door. I flipped my notes here. Sorry, I was flipping my notes. What else did I want to point out? You'd asked about timing with the restoration plan. That's what I wanted to. So we're actually preparing to submit for permit in early March to go in the door. And so the timing of the approval could be affected. I mean, for them to be able to start construction in the spring, early summer when they'd like to. We have no problem, I guess, with Mr. Kange's direction if we could submit a plan and then be able to amend that plan, because they won't start with placing the plantings. That'll happen later. So there's time still to work with staff to sort that out and to see what's really survived. One of the issues with the arterial landscaping that's happened is we came through site plan review for Subaru in 2012 is that the property line is actually the face of the sidewalk along Old Seward Highway, and there's a 5-foot public use easement that contains so that it brings it to the back of sidewalk. So a lot of the snow ends up being stored in the landscaping along there, and so Subaru does continue to end up updating that as part of this work, but that's kind of a contributing factor to the survivability of those plants along that way. So, and with that, I will save my time and answer any questions you may have.
6 minutes? You got 6 minutes left. So I'll start with a question. Could you show me on a site plan what you're talking about, or on our site layout? Just describe it a little more specifically, what's coming out as condition number 5. I still am not sure that when you say the south side.
I'm going to flip to
So of the addition?
Yes. So if you go to page 59 of your plans, there's a site plan. I'm going to make this little tiny point. Right about where the dimensions are, they call out the 6-foot and the 30-foot underneath the Continental. So there's a man door and then an overhead door right there. And so as we have this sidewalk that's kind of protecting the building from the drive, we're going to have to make a grade elevation change there to adjust for that, so that those doors are at elevation and then, so that it ramps.
Okay. So, but whatever the issue is, you've resolved it. You're fine with what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we're detailing as we, as I grade the site. So
I guess my question for you then is, if you could just narrate for us, in your opinion, given this sort of 10% rule for existing de facto approved site plans, what is the 10%? What's your offering up? I mean, where's that 10%, that $100,000 being expended?
So we haven't sorted that out entirely. What we're looking at is the landscape upgrades, interior, increasing that space and those changes. And what we've been looking at is actually addressing some drainage issues on the site and how best to facilitate that. So we don't have that entirely detailed. So that's why it's a combination of the landscaping space, because there's more than 40 parking spaces, so interior landscaping's required. And there were 3 small islands, so we're increasing that as we change the layout, and then trying to fix the drainage. And the drainage will be a large cost just because the system in the road is shallow and the site's shallow and there's a high groundwater table, so it's trying to find a way to facilitate that. So we don't have exact numbers sorted out, but it's that combination of those two things to get there.
Okay. Back to that exterior community space, and then I got one more question in the queue for you. But aside from whether or not people think it should happen or not, are you concerned with the vagueness of the condition? So you're just being asked to come back.
Existing code has nothing that defines community space at all. I mean, so it is very vague as to what we're going to be required to do. And so, I mean, with it remaining that way, I was hoping it was something we could work with planning
So you haven't
sort
had
out.
specific conversations with the planner on what would constitute satisfaction of that condition at all?
No.
I mean, you threw out there a bench. Is it a bench? Is it a whole plaza? You don't know what it is?
I don't know.
Okay. Question from Mr. Kange. Go ahead.
Thank you. With regard to at least the 10% of improvements, you're redoing lighting, I read?
We are.
Okay. And then, I guess, again, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this exterior community space. You know, to the south of the building, I guess what would that be, the southeast corner, there's quite a bit of an area where I'm sure they display cars or whatever. I mean, again, I would think the community could go sit there and look at a car. I know it's not Francis' fault for picking on him about this, but I would be more inclined to strike that as opposed to, grapple with it down the road later as far as what it is and what it isn't. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kange. Ms. Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In looking at your site plan review photos, I'm on page 3 of those that you submitted, you've got some interior shots here of the customer waiting area. And I was wondering if these were recent improvements, if there's any changes planned to this.
That I'll have to ask. How long has it been that way?
Last year, they were approved last year.
Okay. And are we changing it at all?
No.
Okay. So last year.
By way of disclosure, that's what I thought. I have a Volvo. I take it to the sister dealership. So this area appears to have, quite a bit of space. Appears to have access to exterior lighting through the large windows.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barker. There are no other commissioners in the queue. Thank you. You have, I think, 6 minutes remaining. We're going to at this time open it up for a public hearing.
There isn't.
You might not want to go far, Melissa.
No.
Anyone wishing to testify on the Continental Auto Group site plan review? Anyone at all? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. You have 6 minutes for rebuttal.
They don't have anything. I would be happy if you would strike the community space requirement, but other than that, I have nothing.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. What's the wish of the body? Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regard to case 2016-0010 Continental Auto Group site plan review, I move to approve the department's recommendation subject to the conditions on page 10 in our packet, numbers 1 through 5, striking number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Kange. Are you seconding that motion, Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you. As staff pointed out, this recommendation is a minor tweak to the site plan review. It's recommended by approval by staff. I find that it meets the various standards set out in AMC 21.50.320, and I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing? Mr. Spring.
I'd just like to add that I find that the site plan substantially moves towards conformity of the large retail establishment standards, and I think they did a good job of meeting the spirit of that requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Spring. Ms. Barker.
Thank you. I further find that the existing building does incorporate recently remodeled community space that's basically all-season space, and therefore agree that there's no need for an additional exterior community space.
Thank you, Mitzi. Anyone else wishing to speak? Please vote. Oh, you back in, Tony?
Sorry, one more thing. And I know we talked about the landscape plan, and my motion didn't kind of capture what I was thinking about the approval versus submittal. Francis, what can I do here to kind of back up, even though I've got a second?
The commission could strike the sentence, the last sentence in condition number 4 on page 10 of your packet, the one that says submit a restoration landscape plan for arterial landscaping along the old Seward Highway for approval by the planning department, and could add a new condition of approval or simply replace that sentence with arterial landscaping should be or shall be restored at the time of building permitting. The point some wording to that effect, what I'm trying to say is that before final certificate of occupancy of the building permit, that the Building Safety Division, which reviews the building permit review for the arterial landscaping, and that would grant the applicant the maximum flexibility in bringing the arterial landscaping up to par with the building permit.
What he said.
So I'm going to need that. I'm going to need that in some kind of motion, and we'll discuss it. John, you want to take a stab?
Yes, I'd move to strike the last sentence of condition number 4 on page 10 of the packet, which states, submit a restoration landscape plan for arterial landscaping along Old Seward Highway for approval by the planning department, and add, arterial landscaping shall be restored prior to final certificate of occupancy.
Thank you, and that's seconded by Ms. Barker. Brandon, do you want to speak to this?
Yes.
Francis, are you back? No, I think you're good. You're out.
Restored.
Go ahead, Brandon.
So I had a concern that the language suggested by the staff, does that mean they would be required to install the landscaping basically as soon as the season opens, so that we have the entire season to see?
The actual motion is arterial landscaping shall be restored prior to the final CO. And
okay, so we're not talking about permitting.
Not at permit stage.
Okay, that's what was worrying me.
And since we're writing on the fly, can I just get an acknowledgement with the petitioner that that's reasonable? Okay. So there's no concern at the point of building permit. They got the summer to deal with.
I'm comfortable now. So
okay.
I'll support that.
Please vote on that amendment. That motion is amended. I believe that's it. Could we please vote on the main motion when Lori finds it? And that site plan amendment is approved. I would add a final finding just to indicate that we did not hear public testimony on the case, either really in the packet or here tonight. So with that, I believe, wow, that concludes our meeting. So if I could, a couple of just business points to those that did not. Thank you. Congratulations. We have moved the cell tower ordinance to the meeting on March 14th. We've talked about a work plan that Dennis Wheeler could walk us through some of the proposals, and I've asked staff to put out a doodle poll or something so we can get that on our calendars tomorrow. I think that's going to be important prior to our deliberation. So just when you see that, I know sometimes they have trouble everybody responding. Could you just respond right away so we get it on our calendars? But with that, Mr. Walker, I believe, has a motion.
About April 4th, just.
Is it a sure thing?
If there's no delays on the construction, it is.
So we have a notice that it's likely construction will be happening the first week in April. What is it? Can I ask staff, what does that mean? Does that mean we would only have one April meeting then? They would go to, and the alternative, there's a specific alternative, right? Oh, just go to the next Monday. So it would be the 11th or 18th if there are 2 cases for the 11th. Do you know for April, what's the cutoff for that, for cases? Like when will we know if we need a second April meeting or not?
Mr. Chair, wouldn't we want to provide 21 days notice on that ahead of time?
Well, there's a cutoff that's even further than that, so I think it's...
Okay, so you want to know about the April... so there's an April 4th and an April 11th date on our... and the cutoffs are January 25th and February 1st. For those 2 April dates.
So we should know by now. We already know then what our caseload is for April, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I just ask Lori and Hal and you guys, could you confirm with us that, I guess we don't know if there's, I guess what I would ask is that whatever it is, consolidate April into the second meeting, if at all possible. That way you can get everybody dealt with and we know we have one meeting, if that's what, understanding that the place might be under construction.
Yeah, we'll figure, I understand the point. I haven't been working on this issue, but I imagine, I'll, when I go back to the office, I'll ask the folks that are to do that. Tyler.
Okay. What do you want, Mr. Walker? Adjourn?
Yes.
Is there a second? There is a second. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.